be super ready to invest the next 10 years, 15 years in building this. Because if you start with the aim to, oh my God, I'm going to have a great exit or I'm going to sell it, right? I think people see through these things, right? And it's really about figuring out whether this is for you or if it's not. If it is, I think 100% drop everything, go ahead and do it. You will not regret it. I think regret is way worse than failure.
Hey everybody, what's good? Welcome back to the Next Move podcast. And if this is your first time on the show, we're a podcast that shares the strategies, stories, and tools behind people who are making an impact in their field. And today I have none other than Ragini, who's the co-founder of Leap.Club, who are on a mission to get more women into leadership positions through creating a powerful professional network. And today we're not really going to get into too much of the startup, but we're going to touch on it. But we're really going to get into what is it like to be in the midst of starting something new, of starting a new business, all the stresses that come along with it. How does it feel on a day-to-day basis? And a lot of people that I've had on the podcast so far, a lot of the entrepreneurs are looking back 4 to 5 years, right? So they can't really tell you exactly how it felt to be in that moment. On top of that, we're in the middle of COVID, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So I think that kind of just makes it doubly as hard. So I'm very excited to get into it. I'm so happy that we're finally getting this done.
Finally, I know. I think it's long overdue, but very glad to be here.
Awesome. So like I was saying, I really want to get into what is it like to feel, and what does it feel like to start something completely from scratch. But before we do that, let's get into the story a little bit. You left Zomato, a very fast growing startup, almost a corporate at this point. And I just want to know, what was the thinking behind leaving? And was it tough leaving to make that decision to leave a ship that is soaring, that is going super fast and growing very fast, to do your own thing?
Yeah, so I think obviously it was a tough decision. I think everyone who knows me completely, my friends used to call me Zomato, right? Like my friends and family would call me that. And I think, of course, it was a very tough decision because, of course, it was like I loved the role. I loved what I was doing. I think I was there for 6+ years. So nothing, like everything was going right for me, right? But I think when we started, when Anand, who's my co-founder, and he was also my boss at Zomato. So when he and I started talking about how professional networking and how, L&D primarily was largely broken. And I think it was a decently strong vision to kind of go after. But I think when we finally decided that, this is like, we're building this product for women and that's our TG. And the mission kind of shaped up, and our mission is, by the way, more women in leadership positions, like you mentioned, right? And I think when all of that came together, I think that was my cue, right? I knew it was strong enough for me to leave everything and do this full time. And I think last year, exactly this time, is when we just started kind of researching. We just started talking about it, but I had no idea we'd be here, literally.
And I'm wondering, because there's a lot of people who work for companies, startups, whatever they're doing, they're in that safe, comfortable position and they're growing, right? But when you have this mission and you're saying that I want to get more women into leadership positions, how do you actually, again, excuse the pun, take the leap to go ahead and actually start your own thing? Because you're leaving behind safety, right? You're leaving behind comfort to do something completely new. What kind of made you make that jump?
So I think, people used to keep asking me that, will you ever become an entrepreneur? Will you ever start something of your own? Is it a job throughout? And I think 2 years back, I didn't have an answer. I was like, I don't think I have that idea yet, right? I don't have that idea yet. And it's not big enough for me to literally leave everything behind and go do it. And I think when it comes to you, you'll know. You immediately know. And I think at the end of the day, it of course has to make business sense, because passion will not pay bills. But when you know that there's something strong enough for you to leave everything behind and go and do it, I think you will.
Did you have any fears of the start? Like, is this not going to work? Is this idea actually make sense? And how did you go to validate those fears and make sure that you guys would actually, kick off successfully?
I think even before we took the leap, literally, right? I think we spoke to almost 400 people. We asked them to, like, 2-3 very basic questions. We asked them what they do for their professional growth. We asked them what is it that they need, right? And I think primarily what came out and what stood out was, I think what people needed was a stronger professional network. People spoke about coaching, they spoke about mental wellness, they spoke about just having this support system of people they can, discuss that last 5 to 10% of their professional lives with. And I think that's when the entire idea started shaping up. And I think initially when we started talking to people, we started speaking to potential members, etc. I think, and we already knew that it was something that was really missing, and it was a go. And of course, add a pandemic to the mix. It's not easy at all. But yeah, I think we were pretty much on track with what we wanted to do.
Anything looking back, for new entrepreneurs that you would have told yourself, and any advice that you would tell yourself to actually kick things off and get things going?
I think if you ask me if I do things differently, I don't think I would. I think every single day that I've spent in the last, now almost like you said, I think 9 to 10 months, right? I think I do the exact same thing. But I think my biggest lesson and my biggest learning that's come out, especially in the last 6 months, is that don't waste time worrying about things that aren't in your control. I think worry about things that are in your control and then give your best there, right? So I think I potentially could have saved a couple of strands of gray hair maybe, but I didn't expect any of the things that happened, if you truly ask me, right? I think you can read about it, you can read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, you can listen to all the people you want, but I think experience is a completely different thing, right? And I think, not to say I was shocked to find out what happened and all of that, but I think lots of the job learning, right? Beyond, of course, everything that you learn on the job when it comes to the business in general. I think today I appreciate my personal freedom a lot more. I care a lot more about time. And I think today I truly realize that time is money. Your brain just never switches off. I think last night I was working till 2 at 6 a.m. I'm up sitting and making notes, right? So I think you're constantly brainstorming and there's literally no stopping. Everything today becomes a productivity challenge. I think you want to make everything as efficient as possible. I think you respect people a lot more. You respect people who work hard a lot more and value good people, right? And I think at the end of the day, and like I said on your mini podcast, I think eventually it's also a very, very lonely journey, which you only experience once you're in it.
You talked about time, and I think time is my most interesting thing. How are you able to push those 18 hours days? Like when you woke up today, weren't you feeling awful? Because if I sleep anything less than 8 hours, I feel awful. So how are you overcoming that pain to continue on what you're trying to do?
First of all, I don't recommend 18 hours of work at all. And I think everyone reaches that burnout and everyone reaches that point where, and as of course, any normal human being would do that. But at the same time, I think what makes me really get up in the morning, for the lack of a better word, and be at it is the mission, right? I genuinely enjoy what I'm doing. And not to say what I was doing 5 years ago is not something I enjoyed. Of course I did. But I think this is something that you're building for yourself. So you want to give it 100%. I genuinely also feel, I think just where we are right now, as not just as a country, I think even globally, I think having this problem is a great problem to have, right? There's enough to do. There's enough work. There is enough work for you to stress about, and I think that's a real privilege.
But how do you stay productive for 18 hours, right? Like what do you do? You're going on from 6 to 8 to 10 to 12. It's getting dark out. It's past midnight. How are you still able to focus on what you're doing? Is there any like tools, techniques that you do to make sure that you stay on track?
So I think luckily for me, it's not like I have to work too hard to wake up at 6 a.m. Right? I think my body clock is such, and it's a personal decision I took a couple of years ago of starting my day relatively early. And not to say that 6 a.m. is when I open my laptop. I think the first 2 hours of my day pretty much I spend, I don't know, listening to music or just watching plants or reading a book or doing yoga. It could be anything, right? Do literally anything that makes you happy. And then of course your day starts, you pretty much chalk out your entire day and then we're back at work. So I think I'm in office at 10 and that's when the entire thing starts, right? And I think just taking enough screen breaks,
Right.
taking enough time to, I think just go off work for, even if it's for 5 minutes, even if it's for 10 minutes, right? I think that's super, super important. And I think cultivating like a quick fitness regime in your day is something that really, really helps as well, right? And I think, do I do it effectively in every day? No,
Yeah.
I'd be lying if I say I do. But do I try? I try, right? And I think there are days it doesn't happen, and I think those days are slightly lousy. You can't get up and be a shark every day, but I think on most days of an entrepreneur, unfortunately, you have to, because people are looking up to you, and I think that's what keeps me going as well.
Do you think that starting a business requires 18 hours a day? And I ask this because so many people that I've interviewed say the same thing. It's like morning to night, you're non-stop, and that's the only thing you think about. Is there ways to optimize your time and potentially work smarter and not harder? Or do you think it just requires those hours to get even the little things done?
I don't think it requires. There is some amount of passion to play there, right? You want to be thinking about those things. I think about it because I genuinely want to solve problem X or problem Y, or I genuinely think ABC requires my attention, which is why I'm thinking about it. My business is not going to break if I don't think about it for 2 hours. It's something that you constantly do, and I think one should also constantly try to take a break, because, like I said earlier, I think that burnout is real, right? And I think it happened to me 2 weeks back, because I think the entire year, I think ever since Leap started, I hadn't taken a single day off, right? And I think you don't treat Sundays like Sundays, because even then you're constantly thinking, right? Your TV could be on, but you're making notes, right? You could be out on a walk, but you're thinking about, okay, what am I doing tomorrow, right? And I think it's just something that happens. Having said that, I think just taking out time for things that take your mind off work, and that something that genuinely lets you switch off, is also super, super important. And it could be anything. There is no one tip, or there's no one trick. I think it's very, very different for different people. I could choose to spend time with a loved one. I could choose to read. I could choose to go for a massage. In a post-COVID world, but I think you can choose to do anything that truly makes you happy and helps you take that time off.
And I want to ask, what does burnout feel like? Because, you're working 7 days a week for a year, 20 hours a day, or whatever it is. What does it actually feel like to hit that wall where you're like, I just can't do anything more?
It's terrible. I think your body gives up, right? And like I said, I think it did happen to me. And I genuinely thought, 2 years ago, if you asked me, I genuinely thought there was no way I could work harder at a job than I did at Zomato. But I think Leap has completely changed how I look at that. I think, do I still enjoy doing it? Do I still want to do it? Do I still want to put in those hours? 100%, right? But at the same time, I think not taking those breaks will lead to that burnout. And I think it could be anything, right? You just don't feel like getting up from your bed then, or your body gives up, right? It could be anything. And I think, which is when I decided, I just drove to Jaipur, and I went and stayed in a tree house. And it was 2 days. It was nothing, right?
Wow.
But I think just those 2 days of just cycling, or like reading, or, like just getting a drink with a friend, I think like even that was so therapeutic, for the lack of a better word. And I think when I was back, I was back in full form. And I think, which is why also taking those constant breaks, even if it's once in a month, right, is super, super important. I haven't seen my parents in the last 1 year, and I'm going to see them next month, because I know how important that is.
Wow, I think, that's kind of the big thing that people don't talk about too much. And thank you for sharing that, because it's all seemed as, sexy. You're having coffee, you're drinking, you're nonstop all the time, and it's just glitz and glamour. But it's actually just like, it's tough on your body. It's not easy for your stress, for your mental health, for anything to be pushing so hard. I want to get into some of your things that you talked about, yoga and exercise, and you also talked about that on my mini podcast. I just want to ask you, are there specific things that you do, when you're working out, to keep yourself fit? Or like when you're working, do you do 10 sit-ups or 10 push-ups in the middle to take a break and get your body going? Is there anything like that?
So I'm the worst person to talk about it, like I keep saying, because I think I have the most unhealthy lifestyle. But I think for me, fitness is very personal, right? For someone, it could be going to the gym. For someone, it could be yoga. For someone, it could just be stretching. It could be a run. It could be a jog. It can be anything. So I think for me, it depends on the day. There are days I'm up and about and I want to do yoga. I want to do a Surya Namaskar. There are days I don't want to do anything. There are days I just want to say watch TV, right? Or I just want to go for a jog. There are days, of course, you're so stressed out and a run is what kind of solves it. So it could be anything. There is no right or wrong answer here. But I think taking out time for that little bit of stretch, for the lack of a better word, also could help. And like I said, it's very, very personal. It's literally what works for you. For some people, it's football.
Right.
For some people, for a lot of people in Gurgaon, it's kite. But it's literally what kind of floats your boat. But whatever it is, right? I think taking that time out for it is super, super important. And I think productivity is very, very, very related to it as well. And I think there are days when I work out and I come to work and my days are 10 times more productive. So yeah.
And that's really interesting to me because I agree. I think that physical activity is the only way that you really feel sharp. And I want to ask you, because this just came to my head, why do you push so hard? Like, and for someone who's starting their own thing, right? Anybody who's looking to do it, I think something that's tough is to set your own deadline and meet it, right? Because there's no boss looking over you. There's no threat to lose your job. It's your thing. It's your freedom. It's your flexibility. So how do you create that purpose to push and create your own deadlines and you have to meet them? And pushing off of that is why are you pushing so hard?
For a lot of people, it's the self-pressure, right? I think you want to constantly be the best version of yourself, and obviously nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, I think it's also important to, like you said, not push so hard that you're constantly undermining yourself or you're constantly thinking it's not good enough, right? So I think setting very, very reasonable targets is very important. And I think I'm a 100% checklist person. I have everything on my calendar, right from drinking water to finishing a task to calling somebody to everything, right? I think everything for me is on my calendar. But I think something that's really worked for me in the last 1 year, and I've not been doing it since forever, but I think specifically in the last 1 year, what I've tried to do is I've tried to put buckets and assign time slots to stuff that I'm spending time on, right? So let's assume I have to do X. I have exactly 30 minutes for it, or I have exactly 45 minutes for it, or this is not going to take more than 5 minutes, and I shouldn't be spending more than 5 minutes, right? I think just prioritizing your day in a way where it's in your control is super important. If you're going to make a 50-thing checklist, you're not going to cross it off ever, right? And then for you at the end of the day, oh my God, I disappointed myself today. I haven't finished this. Day two, same thing happens because you add another 30 things, right? And I think that's something that nobody should get into. And I've unfortunately been in that board, right? So I think today I just the person I am, I try to set very, very reasonable goals. Do I still think I can do better? Of course, 100%. I think everyone's like that. But yeah, I think that's something that's really, really helped me last couple of months, almost a year.
And how do you prioritize what gets onto that to-do list, right? There's so many things. How do you pick which ones are actually getting in?
So I think anything that's going to break if it does not happen, for me is absolutely P1. And I think that's something that I'm trying. And of course, there are still, because I think as an entrepreneur, there is no X task, right? You're supposed to pay the bills. You're supposed to dispense salaries. You're supposed to manage whatever piece of the business you're managing. So there is no, this is not important and that is important. I think prioritizing ruthlessly is very, very important. And I think for me, depending on what the tasks are and depending on the impact it has, if the impact is going to be delta, which is going to have a huge impact if I don't do it, that's definitely P1 for me, right? At the same time, I think if someone else's work is dependent on my giving a green signal or my contribution or my whatever, right? I think that for me is also super, super important to kind of keep in mind, because the last thing I want is someone else's checklist getting missed because of me.
And this just came to my mind. When you start to employ people for your company, right? How much pressure do you feel that they're working for you, right? Like, if you don't do well, they could be unemployed. Like, that feels like it would be a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. You said it. I think two things here. I think finding good people is a very, very important. Like I said earlier, I think what I've also learned over the last 7 to 8 months, and it's not a lot of time, but I think you value work ethic a lot more, and you value good people a lot more, right? And you value, of course, people who work smart but also hard a lot more, right? And I think it is a lot of pressure, because constantly you're thinking, especially now more than ever, you're constantly thinking that you have to be at it, because, and not to say that jobs are on the line, because they're all smart people and not like that they're not going to have a job just in case this doesn't work out. But of course, I think you obviously want to make it work mostly for them more than for yourself, because I think these are people who took a bet on you when you were nothing, right? And I think we were 2 people. Today we're 16 people. We're in a decent co-working space, and I think lots to be thankful for. And I don't think we would have come this far without them.
People who are looking to start businesses, everybody is very interested in the flexibility, the freedom, and the allure that Instagram tells us it is. Now, it's COVID though, and everything is different. Everything is crazy. If someone came to you asking you, do you think I should start a business? What would you say?
I have a very unconventional answer here. I think,
Okay.
of course, having that risk appetite is super important, right? Before you take that leap. The media, like you said, of course, has this way of glorifying this entire entrepreneurial lifestyle, because from the outside, it's amazing. You read the news articles, you see Instagram, like you said, or you see a post on LinkedIn. But I think inside, it's a very, very different story. I think something and I'm just kind of quoting Sajid from Bloom Ventures here, and we did like a masterclass with him at least, a couple of weeks ago. And he spoke about how one should actually constantly focus on the problem that they're trying to solve versus, oh my God, how big is my market size, or what are competitors doing, or, and of course, these things are super, super important. But what is your plan to get ahead in this game, right? And I think be super ready to invest the next 10 years, 15 years in building this. Because if you start with the aim to, oh my God, I'm going to have a great exit, or I'm going to sell it, right? I think people see through these things, right? And it's really about figuring out whether this is for you or if it's not. If it is, I think 100% drop everything, go ahead and do it. You will not regret it. I think regret is way worse than failure. But it's also okay if it's not, right? Because I think and India has this habit, and not just India, I think globally we have this habit of, just kind of glorifying the Mark Zuckerbergs or the, Deep Kalras or the Dipinder Goyals of the world. But the world equally needs a Sheryl Sandberg, or equally needs an Indra Nooyi, right? And it's okay to be a very, very solid leader and not a founder, right? So really depends on what path you want to take. And there is no right and wrong answer here. But if you have it in you, you have that risk appetite, it's something you really want to do, 100% go ahead and do it.
Wow. Do you really look 15 years in advance? Like you've dedicated your next 15 years?
I've given my next 10 years. I've given my next 10 years. And I think this is something that okay. I knew and I got into. Like you said, I think leaving a decent job and doing this is not easy, right? I think it comes with a lot of responsibilities, but you also need to understand that financially it's a huge responsibility, right? You're not going to be making the money you were making earlier, right? So are you secure enough for the next couple of years to live this life? I think that's a question you need to answer for yourself, because I think I lucked out. I think I have super supportive parents who are not like, oh no, you have to do a job. Are you sure you want to take the risk? I don't have this marriage pressure, etc. But I don't think everyone lucks out that way, right? So it really depends on what sport you're in, really. And if you can go ahead and take that plunge for yourself.
No, I really like what you've said there, because if you think about COVID, it's a very short term. Hopefully, it's a short term thing. It's like 1 year. Hopefully,
Touching
less
all
than 1
pieces
year.
of wood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking 10 years down the line, right, and you're starting something, that's just a little blip. It's not going to be the end all be all. So you can still go ahead and start something if you're looking 10 years down the line. And that's really powerful, to be honest.
Yeah.
I kind of want to jump into some quick fire questions to kind of close things up. And one of the first things I like to ask is, what are your favorite books or movies or documentaries?
So I think when it comes to books, I think there are a few. I think primarily right now it's all nonfiction, and I think the easy answers are the hard thing about hard things, etc. But I think something I very recently, I think this year, discovered is something called Principles by Ray Dalio, which is
Right.
a very, very solid read. I think movies I have zero time to watch nowadays, but I think I recently saw the Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary, which I thought is super powerful. I think very, very inspiring as well. I do have a couple of podcast recommendations beyond yours. I think 100x Entrepreneur Closer to Home is very, very solid. I think the Tony Robbins podcast is pretty solid as well. And I think all these podcasts are also very, very inspiring. I think every morning when I listen to music and when I do all of that, I think I try to include a podcast or two in my morning regime also, because I think it just gives you that winning feeling, right? That I think if people are doing it, why not me? And I think that's very, very inspiring and powerful as well.
Right. And I like to ask this question as well. Do you have any hobbies or obsessions that you do that other people are like, this is weird as hell. Why do you do that?
I obsess about work a lot. And that is a very, very weird thing, right? So I think when you ask me, why do you work 18 hours? Or if anyone asks me, why do you work so hard? It's because I genuinely enjoy it. As a kid, I was someone who genuinely enjoyed writing exams. And not to say I was a nerd, because I was not like a topper, right? But I think I genuinely enjoyed studying. And then I think, I think that's my weird obsession, that I obsess a lot about work. I'm constantly thinking about it. Last night I dreamt about it, and that's what I was telling the team right now. I think I dreamt about something, and at 6 a.m. I've messaged them saying, oh my God, we should do this also, right? So I think, I think that's my weird quirk.
Nice. And just one more thing, and I know you've touched on a few of these, but are there any non-negotiable habits that you have to do? I know you said music. Is there, and you're watering your plants, is there anything else in your day that has to get done?
My 2 hours in the morning, just not opening my laptop. And I think the worst thing anyone can do right now is just get up, go to the shower, go to work. I think you're just starting your day super dull. And I think for me, like I said, I think taking those 2 hours out is very, very important. Taking out some time to read 3 pages of a book is super, super important. I think meditation is something I try. I don't very, very religiously do. I should, but yeah, I think those are my couple of things that has to happen every single day. Otherwise my day goes for it all. Unfortunately, also true for Sunday, by the way, which is not something I enjoy.
Right.
But yeah, I think it comes with a package.
And I just have one more question. Do you ever sleep in past 6 or 6:30?
I do. I have days when I do. But 7:30 would be my cutoff. Like I have to get out the bed. I mean, and I don't push myself to do it if that's your question, right? I think if I need another hour, I need another hour, right? But I'm also the old lady who likes to sleep in early a little bit. So yeah, I think the 12 or the 1 o'clock sleeping is once in a while when there is a lot of work or there is stuff to do. But otherwise, I also like to go to bed by 10:30 max 11.
Ragini, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so happy that we did this.
I'm so glad it finally happened as well. And
Yes.
look forward to doing some more sometime.
Definitely. And thank you everybody for tuning into this podcast. I hope you learned something from it. I'm going to put a cheat sheet of everything that Ragini said in the comments below. Make sure to leave any questions for her if you have anything. I'll make sure to forward that along to her. So thanks again. See you guys in the next one.